I'm here in Cardiff University talking with Dr Shaun Tougher, who is a lecturer in ancient history here and head of history. That's right.
Head of ancient history.
Head of ancient history. And he's written lots of books and articles about Greek, Roman and Byzantine history, but your specialism is eunuchs, is that right?
That's right, yes.
And that's what I'd love to talk to you about today.
Okay.
How did you get into studying eunuchs?
It really arose out of doing my PhD on the Byzantine Emperor Leo VI, because he had a lot of eunuch officials, and he was very interested in eunuchs himself and legislated about eunuchs and changed the law so that they could adopt children, and also built a monastery for eunuchs in Constantinople. So because of his interest, it really grew from there.
Maybe if we start off right from basics and just tell us technically what a eunuch is, just in case anybody doesn't know.
Well, technically, a eunuch is a castrated male, and the true eunuch is the male that is castrated prior to puberty.
Right.
Because only if you castrate a male before puberty do you get the classic eunuch. The smooth face and high voice,
Yeah.
and the long limbs. If you castrated somebody after they'd attained puberty, it wouldn't have the same effect. But the term eunuch could also be used metaphorically, just to mean somebody who was naturally chaste or practiced celibacy.
So just to put the classical Greek, Roman, Byzantine eunuch in historical perspective, what other cultures do eunuchs appear in?
Very many. I mean, they're particularly associated with the Near East. They're associated with the Persian Empire. They're also found in China as well, and in the Hellenistic kingdoms. They sort of adopted them from the Persian Empire, and the Romans then adopted them from the Hellenistic kingdoms as well. So very many imperial royal powers did use eunuchs, and the Ottoman Empire is famous for using eunuchs as well. So there's a very long history from very early times until more modern times, into the 20th century.
Did people in antiquity have opinions about eunuchs? And I'm sure they must have done, but what did they think about that?
It's very interesting, because you do get this conflicted attitude to eunuchs. I mean, some sources are very hostile to eunuchs, and there are sort of very negative stereotypes of eunuchs as these corrupt beings who are very emotionally unstable and treacherous. But you also get the complete reverse, that there is this idea that they are totally loyal beings who will serve their master or mistress to the end, because they have no other outlet in society. So it's very interesting that you get completely opposing images. So you do get both. I mean, the negative image tends to dominate people's minds, but there are the positive images, and they could be seen as very beautiful beings, and they were also, status symbols. So eunuch slaves were very expensive, much more expensive than ordinary slaves. So people valued them as a marker of their social status as well. So there's very interesting attitudes you get coming through.
Who did eunuchs hang around with?
That's kind of a very interesting question, but again, it's sort of something that we're not often told about. We don't hear much about their personal lives. I mean, they couldn't marry,
No.
and they probably spent a lot of time at the court, and we do know that they had relationships with other officials of the empire, but we don't really get the insight into their lives. I mean, because they didn't have families, we don't get that aspect of their history. So you do get the sense that they're very much dependent on the emperors and the imperial family for their life.
Do you have a particular favourite eunuch?
A favourite eunuch? There are many. I'm particularly interested in Narses at the moment. Narses was a eunuch in the 6th century, and he came up through the imperial service. He was a chamberlain, and he was a treasurer, so a very typical eunuch career. But then he became a general. He was sort of sent to Italy by Justinian I, and he did defeat the Ostrogoths in Italy and became governor of Italy. So I find him a particularly interesting case, but they could enumerate many others. And some, Basil the Bastard is quite a famous one, a Byzantine one from the 10th century, and he was actually an illegitimate son of the Emperor Romanos I, so he's another very famous one as well, a very powerful figure for much of the 10th century.
And did eunuchs have a special religious significance?
Yes. I mean, in pagan times, there are famous eunuchs associated with particular cults. I mean, there is some debate, particularly about the Galli. The Galli are these supposedly self-castrating devotees of...
Is that like Attis?
Yes, Attis is part of the cult. He was sort of the mortal lover of Cybele, the mother goddess, and the cult did include these self-castrators who reputedly underwent self-castration as part of their devotion to the goddess, and some people think it's because they're imitating Attis, because he did castrate himself in the myth. But religion is another aspect of eunuch history that's very interesting, because it's sort of lots of religions you find self-castration, including in Christianity, because early Christians, some of them did castrate themselves as well, because Christ had said in the Bible, there were eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven, and some people took this literally and did castrate themselves, and the church did have to ban self-castration.
What period is that then?
Well, it is mentioned, it's one of the canons of the Council of Nicaea in 325 that they ban self-castration. But they do say, well, if somebody else castrated you, or if you were castrated by barbarians or by a doctor, then it's okay, you can still be a priest. But if you do it to yourself, that is tampering with the creation of God, which wasn't allowed.
Wow.
But I mean, there are many religious eunuchs in the Byzantine Empire, and then also in Russian history we have the Skoptsi, who are this cult of self-castrators, so it does continue into the modern era in Christianity. And then also in India you have the Hijras, who castrate themselves as well, or can castrate themselves in the service of the mother goddess there too. So it's a big part of eunuch history, the religious aspect.
You have in the past run university courses about eunuchs, haven't you?
Uh-huh.
Why are they such a good way into learning about the ancient world in general?
I think it's because maybe they don't get talked about an awful lot, so maybe it comes as a bit of a surprise to people that they are part of the ancient world as well. But I think particularly they're interesting because of the question of their gender identity. What are eunuchs? Are they men? Are they women? Are they a completely different gender altogether? So it's a very good way to get students to think about constructions of gender and also biology versus social construction. Those issues are very well served by eunuchs.
Why is it that eunuchs have such an enduring fascination for us in the modern world?
I think it may be because it is something alien that we don't necessarily relate to ourselves, and it does seem like a completely untouchable concept for ourselves. But I mean, the irony is that they did survive into the 20th century, and I mean, they still survive in India. So I think it does have a lot of contemporary relevance still, and you do get people who are fascinated by the whole image of eunuchs and who want to become like eunuchs themselves, or find comfort in the idea of the eunuch image, and people who've undergone castration, medical castration for cancer treatment, for instance. So it can be a very powerful example from history for people that these people did exist, and they could be very successful and did have strong identities. So some people are attracted.
Oh, it's a really interesting subject, and thank you very much for telling us about it.
That's my pleasure.